one time I decided to go back to the movie theaters to watch any movie that I want to talk about. I happened to choose this one called In the Earth. The latest movie by this director, or what's it called? I don't know. I don't even know about this director. Ben Wheatley. This guy, I never saw any of his movies. The only thing familiar that I've seen about this guy is one of the segments of the ABC's of Death 2. When I was doing a little bit of research, I found out that he was the guy who in this segment, he made the segment that is about the POV shot of a vampire. That's the least I will say it without spoiling too much, the ABC's of Death 2. So I never saw kind of like a complete movie out of it. But with a little bit of a background or check about this guy, he's one of those artsy director films. And I'm no stranger to horror films that goes in a very, very artsy direction. I mean, but it's been a while since I've seen something like that. And it always brings me kind of, in a way, of a mixed bag. In a way, how can I explain it? I tend to admire the cinematography that they go through. But at the same time, I kind of begin to roll their eyes because these are the kind of people who they kind of think that their intelligence, they're better than you, or they just want to be so philosophical. Not all the time, but sometimes you get this air out of it. And in this movie, before I start talking about it, let me give you a big giant warning. The warning is so big that it even warns you at the beginning of the movie. The first few seconds of the movie, there's a disclaimer. And that disclaimer is that this movie is going to have lots of scenes of flashing lights and epileptic kaleidoscopic style editing, which if you are photosensitive, or you have epilepsy, or you suffer seizures or flashing lights and everything, don't watch this movie. Don't, because I am warning you. This movie is so hazardous to your health that I have to tell you before you watch this film. It's not every day in which I've seen something saying that you want to watch this movie is going to have these kind of stuff. Although personally, I wouldn't encourage this kind of editing, because I mean, it's like people didn't learn from the famous seizure-inducing incident from Pokemon. What is wrong with you? Okay, this is kind of like my only nitpick on that aspect. Even thought, what else I can say is that this is kind of like one of the downsides that this movie has, and right on the get-go. But what this movie is about and what are my thoughts? Funnily enough, this movie is a pandemic film. Although it's a pandemic film about a group, park ranger and I think it was like an assistant or something like that. They go into the woods to find some kind of cure, but when they venture into the woods, they find some creepy stuff. Like, for example, they see tents that are ransacked. They get mugged, and then they find this guy who makes shady stuff. And at the same time, they're trying to know what is going on, why the woods feel creepy. Apparently, there's some kind of witchcrafty ritual in it. I'm just going kind of like a rundown without going too deep into it. Sorry about that. Yeah, a little bit of a hiccup. Boy, that it wanted to go trying to explore kind of like the relationship between science and nature or something like that. If you see me in doing this review talking almost like trying to put the pieces together what this movie is about, I am technically showing you what are my thoughts about this movie. I am, like many artsy movies, especially going for the horror aspect, I am torn into whether I have to give the movie credit for what it was trying to do, because being artsy it requires some kind of work to think of that. But on the other side, it's pretentious and it's try hard to give out some kind of message. It unfortunately makes the story get even more lost than the two characters that goes into the Lost Woods. And again, the epilepsy and the flashing lights, they don't help. So in short, I am mostly going that I am not liking this film. I understand. I kind of respect it on it, but unfortunately, as a movie itself, even as an artsy film, I didn't like it. So, but even still, I say that I didn't like this film. Does this make a bad movie? Let's say that if you're not into it, you will consider it a bad movie. Because here's the funny thing. There were a few people when I went there. I was there and I sit kind of like in the most backseat rows of the cinema. And I was just watching the movie, but man, that the movie was so pretentious and so artsy, that so much that when the movie was over, I was the only guy in the movie theater. The few people who was accompanying me in this movie theater, they just walk out of the movie and they never return. 4 people, I saw them walk out in the middle of the movie and they never return. So somebody should give me a medal, because I have to endure this movie that basically I think I'm gonna get blind in a few days. Alright, it's time to give you more details about what this movie is about. I already told you the synopsis, but this time I'll tell you more details. It's about this guy who is a scientist. He was longing for human contact because by exposition he said that he was isolated. He even got over some ringworm, and as you can see, the world is suffering kind of like some kind of pandemic, and they tell you, and yeah, it has all these things that they have to keep a little bit of social distance. They even have to disinfect themselves. But the funny thing is that, you know what that movie was missing to believe that it's kind of like a COVID-19 pandemic illusion? This. Nobody's using face masks. There are some people on their biosuits, but you almost never just see people, wearing masks like this. So on the get-go, this is kind of like a strike, because it's basically the virus thing is mostly used as a MacGuffin. But basically, this guy, he said that he wants to go deep into the forest because there's a college that he wants to see, who is also working with plants and everything. So he goes inside with a park ranger, and while going into the woods, everything looks eerie. They feel like they're being watched by the woods and everything. Until one day, until during the excursion, they get mugged. Their things are stolen, their shoes are stolen, and while trying to walk in, the guy apparently, sorry, when I remember that, okay, I'm gonna continue on. The guy stuck something, and it opens a giant wound on the sole of his feet. Trust me, that is disgusting, and it shows you. I'll get to that. And then they meet this bearded guy who kind of looks like even wilder Charles Manson. And the guy at first, he's nice. He even stitches the guy's foot, and graphically, by the way, graphically. And apparently he drugs them, and somehow he begins to fabricate some kind of ritual between these two while they were sleeping. And then of course the movie goes on saying that, well, they're scientists, they're getting some connection with nature. The movie is so full into it that a little bit of a regular guy like me, I couldn't even understand, like, what the freak is going on? And unfortunately, I think that the biggest problem that this movie had is that a lot of the storytelling is talk in exposition. They talk about the scientific this, scientific that. Let me show you this, let me show you that, and you just go through with it. It's technically a narrative, which is one of the weaknesses that I found in this film. There's some character acting, by the way. The actors, they did their nice job. And if I want to get away a little bit with the positive, is that at least, despite that this movie is really, really slow paced, it's a 2-hour film, just in case. At least it's not a 4-hour movie like the Zack Snyder films. It's so slow at molasses. But I also want to say that these kind of movies, somehow, you're going to see some kind of strength if you get into it. And I was into it because the cinematography is one of the strongest aspects of this film. How the camera shot is well done. Although there were some shaky cameras that there is. When the musical atmosphere wants you to feel that there's something eerie inside the woods, you buy it. If you somehow get intrigued on the holy freak, what is going on? Although it's not, I will say that this is one of those things in which it's not scary, but it's mostly unsettling scary. Although they give you the gore, because I already told you that there is gore effect on the guy's foot, in which he was cut, very nasty, and then it has kind of like stitched his foot into it. You know what? I don't care. I'm gonna kind of spoil the movie because this is a movie that I'm preferably not encouraged to watch. Because of the flashing lights and how hazardous it is for your sight. Let's say that the poor dude, you know that when you have your foot with a giant wound untreated with professional medicine, you're gonna have to get into amputation. There is amputation. And boy, that it cringes me. I know. I mean that's the point of the movie. Sometimes there's moments that I do cringe, and some others that I don't. But continuing on, apparently this movie wanted to say that the woods is technically having some connection with nature. Sometimes you have to appease them with a ritual because there's some kind of witchcraft involved into it. So, and most of the time in the movie it is going on, somehow you get vibes from the Blair Witch Project. All from, you know, people out in the woods to even there is even an elaborate dummy made of sticks. That's how Blair Witchy this thing is. And by the way, what I told you about, you know, this thing with this crazy man, is only half of the movie, because there is a moment in which it kind of, that halfway through, when they escape from the man, you feel like the movie is over, but no. The movie actually have an extra hour, kind of like an Act 2, which is when they find this college, in which the more you stay with her, in which she actually gives some a little bit more of a proper first aid treatment to the guy's foot and everything, and she's a little bit nicer than the other guy. You still see that she's also nuts. She covered the whole woods with speakers. She's kind of intrigued in the kind of like in the scientific / natural aspect of the whole of the woods, the ritual, the witch, and there's kind of like this pillar, a pillar that has this that has this hole. But unfortunately, this Act 2. This is where I begin to see the problem with this movie. It's so unfocused on what it was trying to do that it relies so much in exposition that I don't even know what the frick is going on. So what the hell was that movie about? Because it was the movie trying to tell me about the fabrication of legends. Then what about the virus? The virus is kind of almost let's forgotten about the plants, because apparently this woman knows how to hypnotize people, because because you know the brainwave of the sound, because she kind of uses all this thing. So excuse me if I'm not giving out kind of like the most proper interpretation of what this movie is about, but. So, this is actually one of the hardest films I have to review it right on the get-go. Alright, let me give you more details about the biggest elephant in the room of this movie, which is none other than the epileptic seizure-inducing imagery that this movie has. Because once in a while, sometimes, kind of like some of the setting of with the scientific equipment is full of those flashing lights that when they flash is annoying as hell, and although they give some cool shots, but damn that are annoying. Or sometimes when it wants to get artsy, in which it is technically kind of like the character kind of becoming one with nature, it gives you kind of like this epilepsy in which the shots they go so fast, and sometimes it's like someone splats some blood into the camera, or you see pictures of plants. Sometimes you see a kaleidoscope effect. Mainly you're going to see a lot of this, especially during the climax. Once in a while it happens. And when this, well, I don't suffer of epilepsy or seizure-inducing, or I'm tolerant to some seizure-inducing things, it's not a good sign when most of the time I have to do this. Because I want to watch the movie, but if the movie's not letting me watch the movie, then what's the point of being a movie? Which, a little bit of a side note, which is kind of like the opposite effect, that I'm seeing this a lot in anime, Most notably, in my opinion, Hero Academia, in which I am annoyed that some of the action scenes in which they become flashy, they have to turn down the brightness in order to not make it bright. But you know what? That's annoying too. That also is harmful for your eyes. So, now I gave you two examples when something gives you epilepsy with so much brightness, and another one that gives you epilepsy by so much darkness. So neither are good for you. So, this makes this really, really hard to recommend. So what else I can talk about this movie? I mean, I already covered a lot. The effects are good. The climax, I will say that this is a little bit that shit, I'll say. We have all this epileptic seizure scenes, everything come out and say that, okay, the two people who were in the forest, they're definitely crazy. Then we got this, I think it is kind of like a minute and a half or a 2 minute show. It's almost like if you had a slideshow and then the projector, it goes batshit insane and begins to scramble all the images in it. And then the surviving character is like, hey, let's get out of here. The end. It doesn't. It's a movie that it didn't even resolve. It didn't even know what to do so much that I don't know. I just don't know. So please, if someone actually is someone actually seen this movie? Help me out. I'm not exactly 100% good with artsy horror films. Most of the time. I mean, I can take it. I tolerate them. I saw Midsummer. I like that one. In some parts. I saw... what was it? What was it? The one that... Hereditary. Yeah, Hereditary. That one I love a lot. That one I like a lot. I saw Mother. Mother was a pretentious film. And I got what it was trying to do. I got its pretentiousness. But neither of these movies were trying to make my eyes explode. And neither of these movies, they didn't confuse me. I didn't get it. So maybe I wasn't the correct audience for that. But man, In the Earth, my God, I was so lost. You know what? I don't have nothing to say. I just got lost. This movie lost me. I personally didn't like it. I respect what it was trying to do. But let this be a lesson that when you want to make a movie, be careful with the flashing lights. Once in a while is fine, but this is a trend that is getting annoying, and I don't think that the audience deserves just such not only such distaste to their movie experience, but also a movie is not worth it when it is very hazardous to your health. So, well, not much I have to say. In the Earth, I'll say that it's a D+ experience.